Good morning, YouTube, Booktube. This is Johnny. I thought I'd make a video. It's been a couple days and I'm waking up to a new day. My wife just left this morning to have breakfast with a friend, and I have at least an hour maybe before she'll show up again, my wife. So I'm waking up to this day outside. There's some sunshine, but it's cold. But it's not snowing, it's not raining. So, yeah, I'm waking up. I haven't written anything in my paper diary yet, but I'm on page 90 this morning for the year 2025. I've written a lot of pages this month. I usually write around 65 pages, but I've been writing a lot, more than normal. I don't know why. So I'll be wind up writing around 100 pages, which is unusual for me. I must have a lot on my mind. So yeah, here in Southwest Michigan, it is January the 28th, 2025. It's 9:06 in the morning here in Holland, Michigan. Yeah, tomorrow is my wife's birthday. Should be 72 years old, and that's why one of her friends are celebrating her birthday. Yesterday we had lunch with my wife's younger brother and his wife, and they celebrated my wife's birthday. So what I'm going to do in this video is show you some books I got in the mail since my last video, and some used books I got. Yesterday I went down into the book nook. Wait a minute, I have to get something. Hold on. Yes, I went down to the book nook yesterday. I had like 45 minutes before we had to meet up with Carol's younger brother and his wife for lunch at some local restaurant. So I went down to the book nook, the library used bookstore. And I try to go at least once a week to look around, because if you know there's used books somewhere, and like I go to Action House thrift store down the street, and I go to Legacy thrift store, Gateway thrift store, then I go to Goodwill thrift store. And I think this morning, since the weather is really nice and the streets are drivable, I might go to the Blue Stockings this morning and look around, and maybe go to Salvation Army and do the whole rounds and look for used books. But I'm not really sure how I'll feel. The store's not open until 10 o'clock and it's 9:08. So I don't know. But anyway, I went down to the book nook, looked around, and I found just two paperbacks. I found Penguin. I collect Penguin classics. I mean, anybody who's a bookworm collects Penguin classics. And I didn't have these. Now I have Chekhov's I have his stories and other editions, but they're in a box or a bin down in the lower level, and I didn't want to dig them up. But I found Anton Chekhov's The Party and Other Stories, translated by Ronald Welks. As you all know, Chekhov is considered the master of the short story, so I got that. And then I found another one, Chekhov, The Kiss and Other Stories in Penguin Classics. I recently picked up Anton Chekhov plays, and I already had, this is in the Penguin Classics too, and then I picked up Life in Letters by Anton Chekhov. I have a biography in him. I have other books by him or about him. I have downstairs, I have this bin full of Russian literature, and I don't know if I ever shown that whole bin. When I dehauled a lot of books, I kept all my Russians because one of the first, when I was in high school, I read a lot of the Russians and Tolstoy. Just goes on and on. So I have those in a bin downstairs. But so I add that to my Penguin Classic collection on Chekhov. And then at the Book Nook, I had to go get these with CDs. Yeah, the Book Nook, they sell DVDs, they sell CDs, and I look through them, and usually I don't find anything, but I found at the Book Nook Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young So Far. Really good condition. It has. I just bought recently a Fillmore at the Fillmore West, Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young, when they back in the 70s, a live recording of these songs. Helplessly Hoping, Wooden Ships, Teach Your Children, Ohio. Just all these songs. I just when I was coming home yesterday from the Book Nook, I put this on in my CD player in my car, and it just brought me back to my youth, and it was just a pang listening to those songs, because when I listen to Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, it just conjures up all these emotions of youth and being wild and young and somewhat naive and innocent, but it just takes me to a different place. Now, and then I picked up Fleetwood Mac, Rumors, which is one of their classic albums. And then I picked up Jefferson Airplanes, The Worst. Oh, Jefferson Airplanes, which really is means the best. Yeah, when I listen to Jefferson Airplane, it takes me back to the 60s. As you all know that before I came, I left the San Francisco Bay Area in 1978, and I was born in Oakland, California. Now, I didn't always live in California growing up, but my teenage years was basically, I lived in California from when I was about 16 years old. I lived in the Bay Area up until I was 20, I think I was 27 or 28. So my teenage years were spent in the San Francisco Bay Area. I became a Christian in 1970. I was like 18 years old, and I spent a lot of time in Berkeley. As you all know, I was in the psychedelics when I was in high school. Took a lot of LSD. Spent a lot of time hiking up and down Highway 1 in California and smoking a lot of marijuana and reading the Russians and hiking and girlfriends and just all kinds of crazy things. But so when I listen to the Jefferson Airplanes, it takes me back to that time. And then I bought Joni Mitchell, Ladies of the Canyon, which is one of my favorite. The early Joni Mitchell albums are just incredible. I just really like all of them. This is Ladies of the Canyon. So then I got those. And then I didn't show these, but last week I was out doing something, and I stopped at Goodwill. I don't know why I was up there. I can't remember now. But I found 2 books at Goodwill about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. I found this Neotropic Companion, Introduction to the Animals, Plants, and Ecosystems of the New World Tropics by John Kricher. And this is a very kind of technical book, but it's very detailed. Now I read The reason why I got this is because I'm always reading writers from South America, and I have other books like on the Amazon jungle. I have other books on different things on South America, but this goes into animals, plants, and ecosystems of the New World Tropics, Neotropic Companion. And it's one thing else, it's a Princeton University Press book. It's in excellent condition, looks very interesting. So I picked that up. And then I picked up just one other book, The Experience of World War I by J.M. Winter. Now this is a Oxford University Press book, 1989. And as you all know, I collect books on the First World War. I'm not really much into the Second World War. I have a few, but I like reading about the First World War. And so I thought I'd add this to my First World War collection. All the photos. So, and just, there's all kinds of things on the First World War. I thought I'd show you two books. I just grabbed these two First World War books that I have. I have so many of them. This is one called Cataclysm, The First World War as a Political Tragedy by David Stevenson. Now I haven't read this, but it's part of my First World War collection. And I want to get into it someday. A book that's really famous on the First World War. I came across a booktuber last night who I really always find very enjoyable. And she did a video on the First World War, and she looked at two books. And one of the books that she looked at and gave a review of or shared her thoughts and reflections was The Sleepwalkers, How Europe Went to War in 1914 by Christopher Clark. This is 10 best books, New York Times Book Review 2013. And she talked about this book as being one of the best books on the First World War. She is a grad student of East European Studies, and so I'll put the link below of that video, that booktube video, The Sleepwalkers, How Europe Went to War in 1914 by Christopher Clark. So yeah, I like books on the First World War because it's the beginning of early modernism as far as literature. You know, the art that came after the First World War, literature. The whole time period just kind of fascinates me. Another book I got in the mail, I'm not sure if I showed this to you, but I got Nest in the Bones, Stories by Anton de Beredetto. As you know, I just bought The Suicides by Antonio de Beredetto. This is a trilogy. This is the third. I showed you the other ones, which was Zuma and the Sanitary, and then you have The Suicides by him. And so then I picked up his short stories, translated by Martina Broner, translated from the Spanish. And as you know, I've been reading the uncollected stories of Melville Gallant. I thought I'd show you that these other ones I have by Melville Gallant. You have the Paris Stories, selected with introduction by Michael O'Date. I can't pronounce that name, but so Yeah, I read a lot of these. I read 197 pages in this one. Yeah, once in a while I get her out and I read her short stories. The Cost of Living, Early and Uncollected Stories by Melville Gallant. Yeah, you can just read a story. Sometimes, like like right now, I've read about 78 pages in this, and I'll just read these short stories. And then you have Varieties of Exiles by Melville Gallant, short stories selected and with an introduction by Russell Banks. Russell Banks is one of my favorite American writers. I think I've shown you his novels in the past, but I really recommend Russell Banks' writings. Also, I recommend this Michael Odetta. I can't pronounce his name. I collect him. The guy who selected with an introduction by this guy. I have his writings downstairs. So yeah, you can read Varieties of Exiles. So you can just read these short stories. You can maybe read one a day or a couple in a week. But as you all know, I showed you I have the collected stories of Melville Gallant, and I have Paris Notebooks, Essays and Reviews by Melville Gallant. So I really like her short stories. In some ways she reminds me, well, I don't know, she's Canadian, but as I mentioned that she was a journalist and then in Canada, and then she moved to Paris and she devoted her life to writing. I'm still reading Natural History by Carlos Francisca. I want to finish this. I have a novel coming in the mail that I'll show in a future video that I'm going to read. I'm almost done with this. I've been reading it pretty steadily at night before I go to bed. So, yeah, I have his other novel, Astria by Carlos Francisco. I might read this one this year. The new books I got was, these I got in the mail last week or maybe Saturday. Understanding the Divine and Early Modern Reformed Theology by Richard A. Muller. As you know, Richard M. Muller is J.P. Zondervan Professor of Historical Theology, Emeritus at Calvin Theological Seminary, Scholar in Residence at Puritan Reformed Theological Seminary. He is the author of numerous books, including Divine Will and Human Choice, Grace and Freedom, and the multiple volume Post-Reformation Reformed Dogmatics. He's one of my favorite Reformed theologians, living contemporary. So I got this in the mail. It just came out. Understanding the Divine. It's basically on the doctrine of God. The doctrine of God, it goes into all those different aspects of the doctrine of God, divine attributes, the Trinity. They're just different essays that he did in theological journals, and they put them into this little volume. And then yesterday I got in the mail, as you know, I've been reading about medieval mysticism and especially medieval women mystics. And so I bought this used Women Mystics in Medieval Europe by Emilie Brunn and Georgette. I can't pronounce their names. But I got this in the mail yesterday because I've been reading on medieval, probably 13th, 14th century women mystics there in at that time period. So I got this. So So yeah, that's the books. This morning I was going to read Understand the Divine and Early Reform Theology. I'm reading the essay Calvin on Divine Attributes, and then I was going to read this Women Mystics in Medieval Europe. I'm reading the introduction to this morning. So yeah, like I said, it's going on 9:25. I'll probably get dressed about 10 o'clock. I'll get in my car and I'll go probably to Blue Stockings used bookstore and look around. I haven't been there in a couple of weeks. So yeah, that's about it. Really enjoying reading Natural History by Carlos Vinta. Really interesting read. I was thinking about how I'm really terrible at book reviews because I get overwhelmed. How can you do justice to a book? How can you review a book? I really admire people who can write reviews, even though, a lot of times I read book reviews after I've read a certain book, and I'm always found interesting what they leave out or what they focus on and what they don't focus on. And so, because I read a lot of book reviews, I'm always on the internet reading about books, listening to people on Booktube who talk about books, and sometimes they'll mention a book that they've read and I've read it, and I say, well, wait a minute, that's not what I got out of the book, that's not what I thought the book was about. So it's probably very subjective when you do a book review. Most of all the books that I read, I've read something about them. I've read reviews, or I've read a book about them, or read one of their writings. I don't always read a book cold turkey. Now I did, when I saw this book at the Book Nook, Natural History, the reason I looked at it, and it said in the back that the last, in the back it says, Natural History is a portrait of a world trapped between faith and irony, tragedy and farce, an urgent, impressively ambitious novel in the tradition of Caveno and Ricardo Pigola. It confirms Carlos Francisco is one of the most daring writers of his generation. Well, those two writers I collect, Caveno and Richard Pigola. I've shown you his writings. I have his writings downstairs in my South American writers collection. And plus, I mentioned to you the translator, Mechthild. She's a very well-known, respected translator of Spanish literature. She does a lot of translation, and so I respect her. And so I picked this up, but basically I kind of knew that I gravitate towards South American writers. And I think he's from Puerto Rico, I think, Costa Rica. I can't remember now. He was born in San Jose, Costa Rica, and spent half of his childhood and adolescence in Puerto Rico. And he teaches at Trinity College, Cambridge, and lives in London. So this is going on 23 minutes. I'll close. I hope you're all having a good reading week. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for your comments. Yeah, so this morning I'll read Women Mystics in Medieval Europe, and I'll read Understanding the Divine and Early Modern Reformed Theology. I'll write in my diary. I'll leave the house, go visit some thrift stores looking for used books, and the day will go by. So I hope you're all doing well. Stay warm, stay safe, and until next time, bye.